Okay, for this week, we have three main themes for the time period 1968 to 2022. So we're going to get to your lifetime, largely your parents and your lifetime here. And our three themes are going to be technology and technological development, politics, the political development that happens within the United States, and then finally the notion of globalization, how the world is connected in profound ways that wasn't the case hundreds of years ago. So let's start with technology, the kind of most obvious change to the world. The idea of computers, the idea that you could lodge a machine could do work to figure things out, has been around for a couple hundred years. But it wasn't until the 20th century that the technology caught up to the idea. And in the 1940s and 1950s, these very large machines that could make computations were created. They couldn't hold data, though. They couldn't hold information, and that wasn't really till the late 40s and 1950s. It was in the late 1960s that we saw the first kind of quote-unquote personal computer, and this is one from Hewlett-Packard. And you can see it actually. It's pretty much a glorified. It's an adding machine, basically. It's a math machine where you could do mathematical equations, but the computer would be able to hold information within it. Now, the big kind of development here is the transistor. Okay, the transistor allows for information to be trafficked from one item to another, and the process of making transistors smaller and smaller and smaller allows for information to be held and information to be directed from one item to another item. And if you can make it small enough, you can get more information packed in, and you can also get you can make devices smaller, like this one, which is ridiculously smaller than a large kind of mathematical machine from the 1940s. So in the 1970s, we see that technology is able to make machines that can maintain information, can transform information, and can then graphically render it. And then you know the development of personal computers in the 1980s, and more and more advances in both hardware and software for the programming of these computers. Around 1990, this thing called the Internet kind of emerges. And what the Internet was the connecting of all of these, not all, but of large computers, of computers together. So basically you have a wire that connects from one computer to another, to a server, a place that connects them all, and it allows people to interact. Well, it allows people to get information from a place. So you don't have to have the data on site. You can pull the data from somewhere else. And so if you're getting it then from this, a computer through a server to another computer, it's not very long until you could just interact with one another through this server. And so in 1990, more and more computers, more and more people are being connected through wires. And everyday people can, if they can pay for it, can go through their phone lines and literally chat with others. And basically all you could largely get was text. All it could hold and traffic and then show was these texts on screen. Okay. But the idea here is, as an artist rendering of what the Internet kind of would be like, is that it'll bring people together and make them happier, the sharing of information. And it does allow for, if you have access to a computer at the time, you are slowly, and as more information is getting put onto servers and computers and available, basically a huge amount of information that used to only be held in libraries, that used to only be could only be gotten by certain people in certain locations, was now becoming as available as a telephone wire. The next innovation is in cellular technology. Okay, so cellular technology frees people from the wires. Okay, and so this is the kind of the latest cellular kind of technology, how it works. That you have a tower that beams out, gets in and sends out information, so it can send information as packets through the air, and so you don't have to actually use wires any longer. So unlike a telephone where you had to be connected to a wire for the sound to go across the wire wave, now packets of information can be received and sent from this tower. And then with this kind of fifth generation, you have the smaller cells, which then allow actually ultimately go to phones, which then can function as mini towers, basically. Now, notice here the smartphone. So the smartphone develops largely around 2000, and we call it a smartphone, but another way we could think of it as a miniature computer. Okay, that's basically, it's computers miniaturized. That a smartphone today is ridiculously more powerful than a personal computer in 1990. And so these smartphones are another feature of miniaturization. That miniaturization continues that to these kind of cell levels where transistors are able to traffic just amazing amounts of data, and that the processors are able to process amazing amounts of data, and to the point where if you have a smartphone today, you have access to a kind of world information, world events. You can literally talk to and see people anywhere on the globe, even off the globe. You can get these feeds into the space station, into satellites. You can see this material, things that people couldn't even dream of 100 years being possible. You can buy things from across the world. You can do just, you all know this, you're doing them with your phones. Now, with this kind of democratization of computers and information, not only receiving but also content creating. People can create content, they can post, they can send it to one another, they can post it at servers, which then other people can grab. We all know there's the emergence of this thing called social media, and here's an image taken from Ralph Breaks the Internet, where he's learning about posting videos and getting likes or dislikes and things like that. And the idea is that social media is going to bring people together, and the quote on Facebook idea that you're going to have friends. Now we all know that social media is then a problematic public space where there's negativity, where there's it's unclear whether who's a human, who's not a human. It's unclear. It's just it's basically takes the human dynamic, and supercharges it. So instead of interacting with 20 kids in your class, you're now interacting with hundreds, thousands, millions of kids potentially who can say anything they want. Where it's moving so fast, it's extraordinarily hard to quote unquote police in any way, shape, or form. And you have people going across national lines, so who has jurisdiction? Okay. Now, and so social media becomes this place where all of the political developments, economic developments, international developments kind of get put on hyperdrive. Now, the last point here you may disagree with, but I think is true, and historians will look back on this kind of 1990 to the present, 2000 to the present, as the moment humans became more than human, where we essentially became cyborgs. So a cyborg is where a sentient being, a human, and machinery are linked together to create something new. And so while your cell phone is not embedded in your skin, I think cell phones, smartphones, are so much a part of our lives that it's hard to say that they're not part of our bodies. And they're designed this way to be, it's always with us, and so always part of us. And what do you use that? You use it for information, you use it to find where you're going, you use it to connect with other people, use it for all types of things. And it allows you, to be talking to someone, interacting with someone who's not in the room at the moment and others don't know. So humans have become more than human more than what humans were before through the assistive technology. Now, there's other ways we're becoming cyborgs, the future of nanotechnology, especially in the repairs of human body parts. That there's new technologies being used to help those with audible, sound issues or sight issues, giving them the ability to hear or to see. And we have machines that allow us to hear and see in different ways. You can go, if you're a plumber, you can use a machine and look through it. Basically it looks like a phone, and it'll tell you humidity. It'll show you humidity ranges. And so everyday people are becoming very powerful, and powerful enough that with your phone, a group of you can alter stock markets. A group of you can record information that then gets used in courts of law. And so humans have become something radically different than they were 100 years ago because of all this technological development. And then the next lectures, I'm going to talk about how this technology is really underneath and at the basis of so much of how we live in our political world, and how it's such a big part of globalization.